think back to the first few years of Baidu. What were the 3 strategy decisions, or pick any number, that you now recognize in hindsight were both pivot points or inflection points that really changed the trajectory of the company?
Sure. That's a very good question. It's very critical for any startup, I think. When I reflect on the first couple of years of Baidu's operation, I think there are 3 things that's very critical. First is, as you know, we started at the height of internet bubble. When we brought $1.2 million back to China, it was like peanuts compared to a lot of other internet startups in China. And our engineers constantly hear from other friends working for other internet companies in Beijing. They live in the most flashiest office spaces in Beijing, and their salary is raised 3 times a year. But our engineers work in a 3-star hotel, not very flashy, not on the spotlight, and I only promised them to raise their salaries twice a year. So they thought, why, if the company is so great, if we have such a bright future, why you don't do a better job for your employees than the other internet companies? It was a tough call for me. I really thought as an entrepreneur, as a startup, you don't really need, you really cannot spend money like hell and without thinking about tomorrow. So the first critical decision I made is that when I raised the money, 1.2 million, I told our investors that money would last for about 6 months. But when I actually started to spend the money, I told my people, we need to spend this over the next 12 months. We cannot just run out of money 6 months later. What happens was, 6 months later, internet bubble bursted. It was much, much harder to raise money. But I was not worried because I still have more than half of the cash in my bank account. So I started to talk to the VCs and asking for 10 million at a very, very difficult time during internet history. Many of the VCs passed on that opportunity. They thought we were too expensive. We only had about 20 people at that time. So if you divide by 10 million, that's a lot of money for each employee, especially many of them haven't really graduated from college. It's quite really an achievement for them. So I think the first critical decision I made is don't spend money as you promised to your investors. The second critical decision is during the summer of 2001. Internet industry was in a very difficult time at that period, and we gradually realized that this company cannot really survive if we stick with the back-end technology providers thing. So I made the decision to switch gear and become a consumer-oriented search site. The risk for that is you basically start to compete with every single one of your customers. They pay you money. We had a lot of very famous, very prominent customers. But all of a sudden, we started to compete with every one of them. It's quite risky. We had a lot of arguments within the management, within the board, and among the investors. And I finally decided that's the way to go. Because if we don't do that, a year from now, I don't see the company doubles in revenue, and I don't really see the future of this company. So we made that decision and moved on. This decision is also hard to make because when you are a back-end technology provider, it's like selling a piece of commodity. You just need to be as good as everyone else on the market. When you decide to become a front-end consumer-oriented service, you really need to be better than your competition. not just a little bit better, but significantly better than your competition because you are a latecomer. There are already a number of Chinese search services on the market. And in order to stand out, you really need to come up with a much better technology, much better product, and much better user experiences. So that's the risk I took. But I'm really glad I took that risk. Now, Baidu has become one of the best-known Chinese brands in the world because of that decision. The third decision I made, I actually also mentioned that, was Project Blitzen. Shortly after we decided to become a consumer brand, I realized that our technology was not as good. So I went back to engineering and told them, okay, guys, we need to work harder. And I'm no longer CEO. Don't consider me as CEO. Consider me as your project manager. You guys are engineers. You are used to come to the office 10 a.m. in the morning. No, today, starting from today, you need to come 9 a.m. in the morning and have a meeting with me. And I'm holding meetings twice a day with engineers and pushing them to move faster and come out with better quality search services. I did that for about 10 months of period, and that resulted in a better or the best Chinese search technology. So I think that's the three very critical decisions I made during the early days of Baidu.